What's up, Kings? It's Dan from Daft Previews, and I'm back to give you the most comprehensive NBA player prop preview on YouTube. I'll also be sharing my best bets for the slate. So if the preview and player props isn't what you're after, you can skip ahead. There's chapters in the scroll bar. Now, we did sweep the board yesterday. We went 3 from 3. We hit a value play. We pocketed 7.3 units. So stick around to the end of the video for a recap on yesterday's picks. We've got a massive 10-game slate ahead, so let's jump straight into the players who have the easiest matchups based on the defense over the last 15 games. As an FYI, the leans yesterday based on matchups went 11-6, so if you guys tailed some of those, well done to you. Let's get into it. All right, let's get into it. We're starting with the Sacramento Kings versus the Charlotte Hornets. The very first pick is De'Aaron Fox, over 2.5 3-pointers made. Now, the Hornets allow the fourth most three-pointers made to shooting guards. Fox is over this line in 6 of his last 10, averaging 3.2. He's connected on 4 3-pointers made in their last matchup this season. The next lean in this game is Scary Terry Rozier, and his points line is over 22.5 points. Now, the Kings allow the 7th most points to point guards. Covered in 5 of his last 10, he's averaging 24.9 points per game. In their last head-to-head matchup, Terry Rozier scored 34 points. And I've just noticed as this line has moved. You could have got it at 22.5. It's now moved to 26.5 in the last hour. So there must be some news around their lineups. The next lean is Miles Bridges, over 3.5 assists. The Kings allow the 8th most assists to power forwards. He's covered in 5 of his last 10, averaging 3.6 assists per game. And the next one, Charlotte Hornets. Don't do anything with centers. Obviously, Domantas Sabonis is going to make a mention here. We're looking at his points and his rebounds prop. Over 37.5 points and rebounds. Charlotte, they allow the most points to centers and the second most rebounds. Sabonis is covered in 6 of his last 10, averaging 38.1 in those games. In his last 3 head-to-head matchups, 25, 51, and 42, averaging 39.3. We're jumping into the Spurs versus the Pistons. Now, markets are only available on Spurs players at the time that I record this. But the very first pick that we're looking at is Devin Vassell, over 21.5 points. So the Pistons allow the second most points to shooting guards. He's covered this in 5 of his last 10 games, averaging 19.7 points per game. And the other one is Victor Wembanyama. We're looking at over 24.5 points plus assists. Now, the Pistons allow the 7th most points and the 4th most assists to centers. He's covered in 4 of his last 10, averaging 23.8 per game. We're heading over to the Washington Wizards versus the Indiana Pacers. It's going to be a high-scoring game and a lot of stats to go around. One player who's got a great matchup today is Aaron Naismith. We're looking at over 3.5 rebounds. The Wizards allow the second most rebounds to small forwards. He's covered this in 7 of his last 10 games, averaging 3.8. In his last 6 matchups against them, he's covered 3 times, and he's also averaging 3.8 rebounds. The next one is a points prop for Denny Advia. Now, Denny, we're looking at over 13.5 points. Why? Because the Pacers allow the second most points to small forwards. We can see over his last 10, he's covered this in only 4 games, averaging 13.2. But in his last 5, he's covered it 3 times, averaging 15.4. In the 6 head-to-head matchups, he's covered only twice, averaging 9 points per game. Another one that can't be missed is Kyle Kuzma. The Indiana Pacers allow the most points to power forwards in the league by a wide margin. He's covered in 4 of his last 10, averaging 20 points. In head-to-head matchups, he is covered in 3 of 5. He's gone over in his last 3, averaging 24.6. And the next one is a PRA that we're looking at for Miles Turner, over 28.5 points, rebounds, and assists. So he's only hit this in 1 of 5 head-to-head matchups with the Washington Wizards. And in his last 10, he's covered this 4 out of 10 games, 26.8 points, rebounds, and assists. Halliburton is out. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing for Miles Turner props, but it's something that you need to look into because the matchup is good. We're heading into the Philadelphia 76ers versus the Atlanta Hawks. Quite a few players have a good matchup here, and the very first one is Tyrese Maxey, over 7.5 assists. The Hawks allow the 7th most assists to point guards. He's covered this in 4 of his last 10 games, averaging 6.4 assists. In his 4 head-to-head matchups, he's covered this in 2 of them, averaging 7.3 assists against the Atlanta Hawks. The next one is for DeJounte Murray. So we're avoiding his points in this one, and we're looking at his rebounds and assists. Over 9.5 rebounds and assists. And that's because the 76ers allow the second most rebounds and the third most assists to shooting guards. He's covered this in 3 of his last 10 games, averaging 8.7. But in head-to-head matchups, he's covered it in 4 of his last 6, averaging 9.8. The next one is for Sadiq Bey, and we're looking at his rebound prop over 6.5. The 76ers allow the 4th most rebounds to small forwards. In his head-to-head matchups, the 6 of them with the 76ers, he's only gone over 2 out of 6, but they were in both games this season. And if you're looking at his last 10 games, he's covered this in 7 of his last 10, averaging 7.4 rebounds per game. And our very last one is for Tobias Harris, and it's his points prop over 21.5 points. The Hawks allow the 6th most points to small forwards. He's covered this in only 4 of his last 10. That's 17 points per game. And in 5 head-to-head matchups, he's averaging almost 20 points, and he's covered them twice. This line is a little bit elevated because Joel Embiid's not playing. So it's up to you to determine whether Tobias scores this without Embiid or does he struggle? So it's really up to you. We're heading over to the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Miami Heat, and you can't have a Thunder game without an SGA pick. So he's got a great matchup when it comes to shooting threes. So we're looking at over 1.5 3-pointers made. Now, the Miami Heat allow the 3rd most 3-pointers made to point guards. SGA has covered this in 4 of his last 5, 6 out of his last 10, and in his last 2 matchups against the Heat, he's hit this once. The next one is for Tyler Hero. So Tyler Hero's starting at point guard in this game. So looking at his rebounds, that's because the OKC Thunder allowed the 4th most rebounds to point guards. Hero's hit this in 7 of his last 10 games, averaging 5.6 rebounds per game. He's only had the 1 head-to-head matchup with Oklahoma recently, and he only pulled down 3 rebounds in that game. No Jimmy Butler. Kyle Lowry is a game-time decision, and so is Caleb Martin. Our next one, sticking with rebounds, we're going to Josh Giddey, the man from down under, over 6.5 rebounds. So the first thing that really sticks out to me here is that the Miami Heat allow the 3rd most rebounds to shooting guards. His last 2 games against the Miami Heat were last season, but he pulled down 11 and 15 rebounds. Over his last 10, he's hit this in only 4 games, but he is averaging 6.2 rebounds per game. So if you're someone who puts a lot of value in how players have played against certain teams, Josh Giddey to cover his rebounds is easy money. And then our last one in this game is Bam Adebayo. We're looking at his assist prop, over 4.5 assists. And OKC allows the 5th most assists to centers. He's covered this in 4 of his last 10 games, averaging 3.9. In his only head-to-head matchup in the last year and a half, he contributed only 3 assists, but that was a year and a half ago. We're now heading to the Houston Rockets versus the Chicago Bulls, and only 2 players have a great matchup advantage according to the criteria that we're looking at. One is Jabari Smith Jr., and we're looking at his rebound prop. The reason being, Chicago allows the 3rd most rebounds to power forwards. He's covered this in 5 of his last 10 games, averaging 8.6 rebounds per game. Against the Bulls, he's played them twice, 8 rebounds and 10, so he's averaging 9 in those matchups. The other player who also has a great matchup is Patrick Williams, and that's for rebounds as well, over 3.5. So Houston allows the 8th most rebounds to power forwards. He's covered this in 5 of his last 10 games, averaging 3.4 rebounds. And in his head-to-head matchups, he had a game where he got 7 rebounds, but he's also had a game where he didn't get any. We're jumping over to the Denver Nuggets versus the Utah Jazz. We're looking at Jamal Murray's assist prop in this one. As you can see, he is up and down, but Utah, they do allow the 4th most assists to point guards. Jamal has covered in 5 of his last 10 games, averaging 6.9 assists. In his last 5 games against the Jazz, he's only covered this once, but that happened to be a game this season, and he collected 14 assists. Our next one is for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, over 9.5 points. Reason being is that Utah allow the 7th most points and the 2nd most 3-pointers made to shooting guards. He's covered his points prop in 4 of his last 10 games, averaging 8.9. And against the Utah Jazz, 2 out of 4 games, averaging 11.5 points. Our last one in this game is for Aaron Gordon, and we're looking at his rebounds prop over 6.5. Now, Utah allows the fifth most rebounds to power forwards. Over his last 10 games, he's hit this 4 times, averaging 5.6 rebounds per game. And against the Jazz, he's hitting 2 of 5. But in his last matchup against them this season, he did collect 7. Heading into the Pelicans versus the Warriors. Now, there are limited markets available at the moment, and I think that's because we're all waiting to see if Zion Williamson is going to play. But one prop that is available with a good matchup is Brandon Ingram, over 22.5 points. So the Golden State Warriors allow the 9th most points to shooting guards. Brandon Ingram has covered this in 3 of his last 4 games against them, averaging 25.8. Over his last 10 games, he's only hit this 4 times. His last 4 games, he's actually gone under by a very long way. He's averaging 20 points over his last 10. Jumping into the Toronto Raptors versus the Los Angeles Clippers. The first one there is James Harden. That caught my attention immediately. Looking at over 9.5 assists. The Raptors allow the most assists to point guards. Harden has covered this in 6 of his last 10, averaging 10 per game. In 4 head-to-head matchups against the Raptors, he's only covered once, but that was his most recent matchup. I honestly would play this as a single bet, but James Harden actually makes a feature in my best bets in a same-game parlay/multi. But James Harden, great matchup, great form. Can't see why he doesn't do it. The next one is for RJ Barrett, and we're looking at his points line of 17.5. The Clippers allow the 8th most points to shooting guards. RJ Barrett's covered this in 2 of his last 4 matchups against the LA Clippers. They just happen to be his last 2 matchups, and both of those were this season. Looking at his last 10 games, he's covered this in 5 of them, averaging 18.8. He's off the back of 2 very strong scoring games. So the question is, can it continue? He's got a great matchup, and his recent form is great, and he's done it quite well against that team. And the last one in this game is Pascal Siakam. Now, I don't know when the last time we saw his line at 3.5 to get some assists, but the matchup is great, and he's done it plenty of times over his career. So the Clippers allow the 3rd most assists to power forwards in their last 15 games. Pascal Siakam has covered this in 7 of his last 10, averaging 5.1 assists. What's crazy is he's hit this at 82% over his last 108 games. He's averaged 5.5 assists. So to get 3.5 assists where the matchup is great could be a steal for you guys. But obviously this is juice to the gills. The line's more likely going to move to 4.5. Before we get into our best bets, let's give a shout out to Lightbearer459 for his comment on my last video. It is our comment of the day. He said, "Thanks, bro. My son won $1,000 last night off your brilliant analysis." Now that's music to my ears, and I love that for a few reasons. The first reason, because you can see my response in this one. The first reason is that I always like to buy something nice after a good win. And I think this is a really important thing to do when you're sports betting every single day, is to really celebrate that win. It also means if you spend the money, you're less likely to put it back and bet it and potentially lose it, right? So, for example, over the past couple of months, I've spent, I bought $5,000 watches. I bought YSL handbags for my wife. I bought a Tom Ford wallet for myself. We've gone out to nice dinners. I bought parts for my car. That's what I've done with a lot of the winnings that I make from sports betting. And that really does stop me from losing it after I've got a big win. So up to you on how you want to approach it. But I encourage you guys, celebrate it. We put in a lot of effort, a lot of research, watching the game, stressing out. If you do get a big win, spend it on your loved ones or just spend it on yourself. The other part I do love about this comment, though, it's a compliment on my brilliant analysis, which it brings a smile to my face. But I honestly cannot take all the credit. The reason being is, it's made easy because I use props.cash. And I've used props.cash for years. And over time, I've gotten so much better at being able to read the numbers, play with the filters, and understand what everything means. And it really is coming easy to me now. But it's very easy to use. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I've been in conversations with the guys from props.cash, and I've actually been able to secure a discount code for all of my viewers. So if you haven't already, I'd encourage you guys to jump on a props.cash. The link is in the description box below, and use the code Daft25 when you sign up. You'll get 25% off your first month. And I promise you, if you use it every day the way that I do, I'm pretty sure you guys can pick the analytics up just like that. It's got all the stats for all your favorite NBA props. But if it's not just about NBA, it's got all the US sports on there too if you wanted to. There's NFL, NCAA, NHL. It's really up to you. But I encourage you guys, give it a try. It's a 25% discount on your first month. So go ahead and check it out. But let's get into my best bets for tomorrow's slate. My first pick, I'm taking Zubac from the LA Clippers over 13.5 points. He is up against the Toronto Raptors. And I love this play for the very same reason we just took Anthony Davis. I even copy and pasted part of the write-up. Check this out. He's got a great matchup today. He didn't show up in our plays with a great matchup because over the last 15 games, the Raptors have been okay. But over the last 6 to 7 games, they've been ass. And what I love more about this is that Jakob Poeltl is injured and the Raptors just traded Precious Achiuwa to the Knicks. So they're really depleted in that front court. They've got Chris Boucher, 6'9", 200 pounds. Today they started Thaddeus Young, who's like 6'8" at best. And they've got a rookie, Jonte Porter, 6'10", 240, but he only plays 5 to 10 minutes a night. Zubac, he can get the work done on offensive rebounds, putbacks, lobs, pick and roll action should come easy. If he does catch the ball in the paint, there's no reason he won't go up with it. If you want to talk about his form, he's covered this line in 6 of his last 10, averaging 13.5 points per game. His last 3 have been excellent, scoring 14, 22, and 19 points. In the 2 games against the Raptors last season, he scored 23 and 17 points against them. The Raptors, we know they're going to be small inside. I'm expecting a bigger and better performance than usual from Zoo. That 13.5 points is nothing. I also wanted to show you how they fared against the centers recently. We saw Jalen Duren score 18, James Wiseman cover his line, Jarrett Allen score 16, Sabonis scored 24, and Kevon Looney scored 10. And then just recently, Anthony Davis scores 41 points. My God, street clothes Davis absolutely demolishes them. So, look, Zubac's no AD. I get that, but he's got the size advantage. He'll get the touches. James Harden's on a tear in the pick and roll. I think they'll find Zoo early. They'll find him often, and he'll cover this points line. I'm that confident in Zoo for this one that I've got half a unit on Zubac to score 20 points for the reasons mentioned above. I got it at $5.75, which is plus $4.75. It's up to you on whether you want to take it. So I've got 2 units for him to cover his over, and I've got a half a unit on him to score 20 points, and hopefully the boy delivers. Our next pick, we're staying in the same game, but I've got a same game parlay, a same game multi for you in the Clippers versus Raptors game. It's a very simple one. The very first pick in that is the Clippers money line. The Raptors are a back-to-back in LA. The Clippers have won 10 straight games as home favorites. The next one is for James Harden to get 8 assists. Now, the Raptors allow the most assists to point guards. Harden singing at the moment. He's covered 8+ assists in 9 of his last 10 games. The Raptors are playing at a high pace at the moment with 0 defense. 6 of the Raptors' last 7 games have gone over the total match points line. So if there's a lot of points, the Raptors don't play defense. Zubac has a massive advantage inside. Why can't James Harden get 8 assists? The last pick, Scotty Barnes. For him to get 15 points, he's covered in 78% of games this season. He did score 17 and 20 points in his last 2 matchups against the Clippers. I guess with the Raptors, all their production in offense is going to come from 4 players. And out of those 4 players, I like the odds of Scotty Barnes to get 15 points. So let's go Scotty, James Harden, and for the Clippers to win. I got that at plus money. Just let me double check what it was. I got that at $2.05. So it's plus money. Get on it. Our final best bet that I wanted to share with you is for another 2-unit play. We're looking at Kyle Kuzma over 23.5 points. If you've been watching this video for weeks and weeks and weeks, you can probably predict what the write-up's going to be for this pick. He's up against the Indiana Pacers, and say it with me, the Indiana Pacers allow the most points to power forwards. And I said it when Giannis plays. I said it when the Boston matchups about Jason Tatum. Whoever's versing the Pacers, if they have a man capable at scoring at power forward, I'm probably going to take his over. But let's talk a little bit more about this. Not only do they give up a lot of points to fours, the pace is going to be ridiculous because both teams just run up and down all night. They don't play defense. The total points line set at 251. I think that's moved to 252. So everyone's predicting more. So there's going to be a lot of points. If we look at the Pacers defense, the Pacers opponents, they have an effective field goal percentage of .563, which places them at 25th in the league. So they're one of the worst defensive teams. Kuzma's recent form, though, let's have a look at that. It is a little bit patchy. He's covered in 4 of his last 10. He's only averaging 20 points per game. What does leave me optimistic about this pick is that he's played the Pacers twice already this season. He scored 25 and 31 points against them. Looking at his last 5 games against the Pacers, what I love about this is his activity. He averages almost 20 shot attempts per game when he's versing the Pacers. And in those games, he only shot 44% from the field. So far this season, the Indiana Pacers are allowing opposition power forwards to shoot 55% from the field against them. Kuzma's average on the season is 47%. So given the softer matchup, I'd expect Kuzma to shoot close to 50%. And if he takes close to 20 shots against the Pacers, they're also the team that allows the most points in the paint and the most points to power forwards. If he can get a 3, a couple of free throws, I think he can cover this 23.5 easy. I'd play it up to 24.5. So let's go Kyle Kuzma. That's my final best bet. I obviously do have more planned, more research, more props.cash usage happening for tonight. So if there's anything more that I do come up with, you can always jump into the Discord and you can see all the bets that I place. I share everything that I do and I don't charge a thing for it. So feel free to jump in. Let's get straight into a recap on the day that was. All right. So here's the recap of the day that was. We had 3 bets. We took Jaden Ivey over 20.5 points and assists, which cashed. Made 1.76 unit profit there. We had Jaden Ivey for 15.5 points, 4.5 assists, and 3+ rebounds. We made 3.75 units there. And then we had Anthony Davis over 28.5 points, and that was no sweat. And we made another 1.8 units. So 7.3 units profit on the day. Perfect sweep. I think we've had 2 days in a row now. So things are looking delicious right there. If you want to look at how the season is going, we do go up and down, of course. This is sports betting, but since this NBA season has started, I've tracked every single pick that we put on YouTube. 245 bets. We're up 55.2 units and a 12.8 return on your investment. The goal for me is to keep this ROI over 10%. I hear professionals do it at 6 to 10%. So if I can keep that above 10, I'd be absolutely chuffed. Jumping into the analyzer and we take a look at how they perform the different bet types. We can see that the player props, we're at 16 units profit on those. Single value plays. So that's our value plays on the single players. We're up 46.98 units. We hit 24% of those bets. The odds are much higher, but you are more likely to lose. Same game multis haven't been kind to us. We're at 6.4, but hopefully the Clippers one delivers today and we can scoop some of that back. And taking high value singles. So hopefully Zubac to score 20 points will be the first one that we get on the board and get this back in the green. So yeah, look, that's a wrap on today's video. I know it was a long one, and if you did make it this far, thank you very much. I hope you guys are loving the content. Like, subscribe if you're new. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully you back some of these picks and they deliver. Hopefully the preview on the player props was everything you hoped and dreamed for. If you do have any feedback, thoughts, and opinions, love to hear it. Leave me a comment. Here's that favorite song of yours. Let's go.
Sub to the channel cause your boy's getting busy. Coming to you live from the west side of Sydney. We've got the free picks and the juice on the daily. It's all free, you don't even have to pay me.